Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's HDI webinar, Incidents on the Rise, addressing the why, what, and how. Today's webinar is brought to you by Everbridge on the web at everbridge.com, and there's a link right in the Attachments tab on your BrightTalk window, and we'll talk more about the Attachments tab in a minute. HDI is where technical support professionals belong. And this is a little bit of a reminder for you as well that we have coming up October 31st and November 3rd in Orlando, Florida, the Fusion Conference, which we do in conjunction with ITSMF USA. We'd love to have you there, and early bird pricing is available until September 8th, so register soon. Stay in touch with HDI by finding us on Facebook, following us on LinkedIn, or on Twitter at ThinkHDI. And members have access to connect.thinkhdi.com, and there's tons of information and conversations going on all the time. Members are asking questions, getting answers, posting templates, and it's a great place to connect. That's why we call it Connect. See that? I'm Ray Atkinson, and I'll be your moderator today. We have a few housekeeping announcements before we begin. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please refresh your browser. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast, and they will be answered during the Q&A session toward the end. You can download the slides from today's presentation by opening the Attachments tab on your BrightTalk screen. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. And remember that today's webinar will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live webcast, and you will receive an email reminder to let you know that it's available. Thanks for attending today. And with us today is Vincent Jeffrey from Everbridge. He's the Senior Director of Product Marketing. And before we get started with the actual presentation, we'd like to find out just a quick question from you, and so we're going to ask you to take a little bit of a poll. And the first poll we're going to ask is, according to HDI research, incidents are trending upward in 56% of organizations. Is the number of incidents increasing in your organization? So just take a minute to answer that yes, no, or you're not sure. Incidents trending up in your organization, and more than half of organizations report that that's the case, including organizations that have a formal problem management process in place. So, very interesting. We'll give you a few more seconds to answer that question, and then we'll take a look at the results. Okay, let's stop the voting, and let's take a look at the results. 75% of you said incidents are trending up, only 16% said no, and 9% said not sure. So a higher percentage of you are having incidents trending up than what we saw in our recent research. Very interesting that this continues to be the case. Vincent and I are going to talk quite a bit about incidents, the reasons for them. And just so you know who Vincent is, he is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Everbridge, focusing on IT service alerting and notification automation. He has more than 15 years of experience in the IT operations and service management space, with expertise in critical communications, IT service alerting, application performance management, and IT process runbook and workload automation. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you for having me, Roy.
Great to be with you again. So let's talk a little bit about some of the research that we've done from our annual research, as well as some separate research that we did and look at incidents on the rise. So we know that year over year, we don't ask specifically about incidents in our annual survey simply because we have a very high percentage of organizations that do not delineate between incidents and requests, service requests. They just count tickets. So we can't tell who's got incidents in what percentage and who's got service requests in what percentage, except for a small portion, about a third, that measure those two things separately. So if you do measure them separately, and you should, then thank you for doing that. But so what I did was I looked at our past annual reports, our practices and salary reports, and as you can see, over half in every year and about two-thirds in a lot of the years have reported an increase in ticket volume. And we also know that more than half of those tickets are incidents, because that's what people tell us. More than half of them are incidents. So there you go, 54% of them are incidents. So year over year, the number of tickets is increasing. More than half of those are incidents. So we know, in fact, that incidents have increased year over year. This year, a little bit earlier this year, we had a separate piece of research, and we asked, are incidents increasing specifically in your organization? The same question we just asked you in the poll. And we found out that yes, in 55.9, so I rounded it to 56% of organizations, incidents are in fact on the increase. So it's fascinating stuff. And here's what people tell us in our annual survey are the most frequent reasons for the increase in the number of tickets, and ergo the number of incidents. New applications and systems, well, that makes sense because people are unfamiliar with them, or they're just getting started, and sometimes new applications or systems fail early. The number of customers, well, that makes sense. If companies are growing, then there are more internal customers, more employees, and perhaps more external customers. All depends on who you support. Maybe you support both. And so if the number of customers is increasing, chances are the number of tickets is going to increase. New equipment and devices, well, people are maybe unfamiliar with them. They may have to do different things. They may have frequent questions and may have to call support to come and install things that they don't have access to or whatever. So that makes perfect sense. Mergers and acquisitions, well, that's a trial for a lot of you. I'm sure if you've been through a merger and acquisition where two companies get together but they have different systems, different equipment specifications, different application access, different ID requirements, different password requirements, that can generate a lot of work. So that makes sense. The sheer number of applications. Guess what? Businesses are using more and more and more software to run operations and to perform tasks that would have been performed manually in the past. And so the number of applications increases, the number of questions or problems may increase as well. And of course, the ever-popular mobile device support. Things go wrong, the device won't connect to the network, whatever it happens to be. And as we know, there's a huge factor of mobility today. Some of the major analyst organizations predict that by 2020, which is not far away now, about 70% of the workforce will be mobile. So there's an increase in mobile device support demand on the support center. So that's all of those reasons make sense in one way or another and continue to drive the volume of tickets up. And that's one of the things that I usually point to, Vincent, when I talk about the fact that, you know, the death of the support center is greatly exaggerated. In a lot of reports, people have been predicting for years that support was going away, and we know it's not because the demand keeps going up.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And demand, like you say here on this slide, the business demand is driving all this. And we could even summarize the list of bullet points here by the digital transformation. Companies, whether they want or not, have to transform and go digital, and that's very clear in this study here. And when you mention a mobile device, there's the fact that yes, the workforce is going mobile, but also think about all the different types of devices. Now, when a company is releasing a new mobile application, has to work on an iPad on hundreds and thousands of different devices. So yeah, this is becoming critical, and like you said, this is driven by business demand that is increasing, and this is not going to stop. And the higher number of business applications, the higher number of tickets that are going to be generated. So I'd like to continue this discussion with looking at another reason for the increased number of tickets. And after looking at the business reasons, let's look at the technical reason. And there is a study that I like to use. It was published a few months ago, and it's looking at the top causes for IT disruption, right? So what you see here is the findings. So the respondents were asked the question, what are the top causes for IT disruption or IT outages in your organization, in your company? And that's interesting to see that still today, network outage comes number one. It's the number one cause of unplanned IT outage, along with hardware and IT component failure. And then comes the business application issue, so bug, a problem with the application itself, and then we've got different types of causes, which I would even classify under human errors. You know, you deploy a new build of an application, and this is going to cause trouble with other areas of your infrastructure. And I was surprised by the last answer, which is the last category, which is the cyber attacks. If you look at the web and in the news, you see that every day we have examples of DDoS attacks or cyber attacks. Now, given the fact that this study was primarily conducted with large organizations, I believe those applications that people were considering were mostly internal applications, so servicing internal users. So that's why I guess the cyber attack number is somehow very low. But what's interesting about... Yeah, I just wanted to add, Roy, excuse me, that... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that what the key point here, the key takeaway here is when you look at all those causes for an issue, you can find easily that they have two things in common. The first one is none of these can be predictable. You cannot predict when your next network outage is going to happen, and none of them can be avoidable. So you can't say that, oh, this year we won't have any network outage or any data center outage. So again, with IT and the cause for IT incidents, it's not about if they're going to happen, but it's really about when. So you better be prepared for when they hit.
Exactly right. I was just going to illustrate some of these from personal experience. Network outages, I don't even want to talk about them, frankly, but there's so much involved. There's so much connected to networks now. I've been through network outages that affected critical HVAC systems and took portions of those systems offline, which made climate control in very critical areas go down. That was very nasty. Hardware or capacity issues, well, that happens, fairly frequently, and it shouldn't happen as much as it does. But as Vincent said, sometimes these things are completely unpredictable. Internal business or application issue. The illustration I have there is an enterprise-wide collaboration suite. In other words, email, calendar, room reservations, appointments, all of that type of thing. Became unstable when somebody uploaded an attachment over a certain size. Somebody uploaded a large attachment and took the entire system down. It was completely unexpected. Nobody knew what was going to happen. There was no literature about it. Unplanned maintenance, guess what? Somebody steps on the Magic Master power switch, and I've seen it happen, and take the data center down. So all of these things do happen in real life. These just aren't numbers in research. They really do happen.
The last example you just took, Roy, if you Google British Airways right now with data center outage, you'll find out that that's exactly what happened with British Airways in June, so 1 month and a half ago.
Yes, and that generated a lot of chaos at not only at Heathrow Airport, but a lot of other places around the world.
That's right.
Thank you. So, again, we asked this question: is the number of incidents trending up or down, period over period, in your specific organization? And we discovered, and this is in Q1 of 2017, so it's recent research. Overall, organizations said that about 56% was trending upward. And that includes organizations that have very high maturity and also ones that are really concentrating on being on top of business outcomes and everything else. There's still a lot of organizations that are seeing incidents trend upward for the reasons that we cited earlier. Changes in infrastructure can help decrease the factors. They can cure some of those failures, But again, as Vincent said, it's going to happen at some point. You can modernize your infrastructure. You can put failovers in place. There's a lot of things that you can do to try to decrease the interruptions, but still, it's going to happen. Self-help can be very beneficial to the number of incidents that get reported to the service desk can help, and I do not like the words call deflection. I think call management is a much better way to put it, or contact management is a better way to put it. You don't want to not talk to your customers. You want them to be able to call you. You don't want to deflect them. You want to help them, but you want to help them the most efficient way, and sometimes that is self-help. And if you provide a good self-help knowledge base for your customers, allow them to get documentation, allow them to download solutions, watch videos, whatever it happens to be, that can help you reduce the number of tickets that come in and reduce the contact volume. Knowledge base is extremely helpful, of course. Problem management processes, as I mentioned earlier, that's a way to try to take away the causes of the incidents. Solve the problem. Don't solve 15 incidents for 15 different people. Find out what the cause is and fix it. And new applications and systems, replacing problematic ones. Remember, we saw new applications and system as a cause of an increase. It can also be the cause of a decrease in incidents and general ticket volume, simply because you've replaced systems that were not performing properly and were interrupting people when they were doing their work. So that's some of the decrease. So here's a metric that almost nobody uses, and I like to talk about it. I like to mention it just to put the idea in your head that you can use this. It's interrupted user minutes, or IUM, and it is the length of the interruption in minutes times the number of affected users. So let's say you have a 20-minute outage that affects 20 of your users or customers. You've got 400 interrupted user minutes. That can be very useful to display, especially to senior management, when you're trying to make the point that a particular issue is causing a lot of grief to your customers. If you take 300 people that are down for an hour, you've got a lot of interrupted user minutes there, and then we're going to go one step beyond and look at the actual dollar value of those interrupted minutes, right, Vincent?
Yes, exactly. And just want to add a few things about IUM, because I think it is a good metric that can be used, and it can even help for prioritization of your incidents. As we know, the prioritization of incidents is critical for the service desk or the support centers, so that the right process is being activated to respond to the incident. And so usually the prioritization is done based on the customer and the business need, can be done on the financial impact of an application or a service, of course based on the criticality of the service, the business risk, and in some cases it can even be based on legal requirements such as a cyber attack would fall under this category. And the way most organizations are dealing with prioritization is they follow the ITIL guidelines. So if you're familiar with ITIL, this is basically based on two dimensions. One is impact and one is urgency. And this IUM metric here can be used to help with prioritization if you are not using impact and urgency. So basically, impact is what I said, is the impact of the service interruption on the organization, on the business, and urgency is about the speed with which the incident must be resolved. So again, if you don't have a formal severity assessment in place, you can use IUM. And like Roy said, let's say you have an incident open for 10 minutes impacting 1,000 people. That's an IUM of 10,000. So looking at all the different incidents that are open, looking at their IUM, you can decide which incident should be taken care of first. So
someone has asked a question. I just peeked ahead at the questions, and I saw that someone asked us to define an incident. So I'll give you the straight definition of it. The difference between an incident and a service request. and maybe a quick word about why it's important to distinguish between them if you don't. An incident is an unplanned interruption of a service. So something breaks and therefore locks users out or interrupts the application or causes email to go down, whatever it happens to be. It's an unplanned interruption. And a service request, on the other hand, is a request for help. Can you reset my password? Password resets are a service request. Look it up. Or I need this. I need a new laptop delivered to somebody who's coming to work for me. That's a service request. So that's the difference between an incident and a service request. And the way I usually explain it is like this. An incident is clean up on aisle 5 when the jar of beets falls off the shelf and shatters all over the floor, spilling beet juice. And a service request is someone who is small in stature, can't reach the shelf where the beets are, and asks for help getting them down. That's the difference between an incident and a service request. Thanks, Mitchell.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the clarification. And I have a slide that should also help make the difference between a service request and incident later. So we're talking about IUM. There's another way to help categorize an incident, and that's just looking at the cost of the incident for the organization. And I was talking about this survey which was published a few months ago, and in this survey, the question was asked to the respondents about the cost per minute to their business. And the average answer, or the average cost per minute of unplanned downtime per minute was $8,662 per minute, which of course varies between verticals, domains, with the size of the organization, but large organizations usually report around $9,000 per minute as the cost. Now, if you do the math, you see that this $9,000 per minute is more than $500,000 per hour, which means it's critical that when those incidents happen, we have a clear process defined to resolve those incidents as soon as possible. So let me walk you through the process that it takes to resolve such major incidents. So I like to summarize the process into 5 phases. The first one is you need to be aware that you have an incident. We need to detect this major incident or this major disruption. Number 2, once we have identified we have a major issue, we need to trigger the plan that's going to respond to the incident. And I would get into the details. Once we have the right people looking at the incident, they're going to be, doing an investigation, going to come up with a remediation plan. We're going to execute the plan. That's phase number 4. That's the remediation. And once we apply the changes into the production environment, we most likely going to have someone or a team looking at the changes just to make sure that whatever we've changed has fixed the issue and restored the service, and that's the validate phase. And usually IT organizations and also support centers track the time it takes from detecting the issue to resolving the incident, and under the metric MTTR, or mean time to restore. Some call it mean time to repair. And that's the main metric that gives you an idea on how good you are at resolving issues. Plus, in the meantime, most likely your organization will have SLAs in place or internal OLAs in place, so that for those mission-critical applications that your organization relies on, you have a certain number of hours or minutes to resolve an issue. So measuring this MTTR will tell you if you are on track with your SLAs or not. And so like we said, prevention is key. We want, of course, in a perfect world, we don't want those major incidents to happen, right? So what companies have done in the past, I'm going to say 15 years, they've invested a lot in automated detection and solutions so that they are aware of an incident or of a disruption of service ASAP. So you've heard solutions like APM, Application Performance Management, NPM, Network Performance Management. These are the solutions like AppDynamics, Dynatrace, Gomez, SOSTA, but also SolarWinds, all those tools that are looking at the health of your infrastructure and sending alerts when something goes wrong. And then you have the ITSM platforms or the ticketing system that are being used to log the information about the service request, but also incidents, right? So I believe that most of you are familiar with the company names that I have listed here on the slide. And so that covers phase one. But now what? Once we have a major incident, what happens next? So what happens next? As a technical support professional, as a service desk professional, as an incident manager, what do I need to do next? How do I respond to the incident? How do I engage with the right IT team? How do I inform the business users? So how do I communicate with all the stakeholders? So that's really key for the service desk and the support centers. And that's what we're going to get into details now. So, like Ron just gave us the definition of what an incident was, and as opposed to just a service request. Now, I was mentioning the ITIL framework, which looks at incidents through the impact and urgency lens, and depending on the classification of both impact and urgency, it's going to help you define the priority for those service requests or priority for those incidents. And depending on this level of urgency, we're going to have different process. We're going to respond differently to those requests. As you can see here, for the lower impacting request, we can just communicate with the business users via email. If it's a password reset request, if it's a new credential request, this kind of request can be dealt directly via email, and most likely your ITSM platform or your ticketing system allows you to communicate directly with the business user directly through the interface of the solution. Now, for the most critical request, or for what we would consider the P1s and P2, where a timely answer has to be provided. Should that be a very important request or a disruption or outage of an application? In this case, we cannot rely on email communication to reach out to the different stakeholders. And in this case, most organizations are going to consider response automation solutions to help in those situations. It's also known as IT alerting solution. If you look at the Gartner, they will summarize those solutions under the term IT alerting. So, looking at the service desk now, what's very interesting and what is very important to note is that the service desk or the support center is key in dealing with a crisis situation. What you see on this slide is from the left to the right. Whenever there's a major incident, your business users are being impacted. What's going to happen next? Business users are going to start logging request or incident into the service desk. Should that be via email, via phone call, via a form that they fill out on the web? It can also be the issue can also be detected directly by your network operations center, your NOC or your SOC, and then we reach out to the service desk. Now, I include with the service desk the incident owner and the incident coordinator. So I basically include here the incident management function to the service desk. Now, what's interesting to see is that this group or this group here works as a central communication hub. As you can see, they are the one responsible for communicating with the business users to let them know, to give them any update on the resolution of the issue that they are experiencing. But they're also communicating with the senior management and the line of business whenever there's a mission-critical application that's at risk or is having an issue, therefore having a business impact on the organization. And they're also communicating back and forth with the major incident response team. So the major incident response team here is basically your IT team who is responsible for looking at the issue and actually resolving the incident, so fixing the issue.
Right, and here's we're gonna take another brief poll, and if you're in full screen mode, I guess you can't see the votes. That's what somebody told us anyway. So, but I'm gonna do this poll, and it asks the following. Does your organization have a major incident team defined and ready? And we should talk a little bit about major incidents on Vincent's slide with the impact and urgency. You did see that, you know, a P1, a number one priority major incident is something which prevents the business from doing business. And I've seen that happen. The entire network goes down, including a connection to the internet, and your website's offline. People can't get your products, they can't see your services, whatever it happens to be. I've also seen some really tough ones where email went down, and at the time the email administrator restarted the system but didn't realize there was a connection to an order-taking system where people would automatically submit orders through email, and that order system was offline for almost a day, and that was a big one because it represented, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these things can be very serious. Okay, so if you've taken the poll, great. I'm going to let it go for another second or two, and then I'm going to stop the voting, and let's take a look at what we have. Okay. Does your organization have a major incident team? 60% of you said yes. Well, that's good. On the other hand, 36% of you said no. So maybe you want to think about forming a major incident team so everybody knows what they're supposed to do in the event of an outage. Sometimes that's extremely important, just that people know what they're supposed to do so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you will have to come up with some very creative solutions, but if people know what their responsibilities are and know who they should be asking questions to and who they need to report to, life will be better. 4% of you aren't sure, probably based on your positions, but you might want to, when you get back to your organization today, you might want to ask, is there a major incident team? And what might my role be in case of a major incident? Great, thanks for answering that poll.
That's great finding, yes. And back to the major incident team, yeah, so think about it as the team of responders to an issue. So depending on the application that's at fault, depending on the nature of the incident that may be, like we said before, a data center outage, a network issue, you may not contact the same major incident team, okay? And that's, yeah, you don't want to bother people with issues if they're not responsible for fixing those issues, right? So you may find here in the major incident team, people from the network team, DBAs, of course, application developers, but also third-party vendors if you are working with, you know, solutions like, you know, an ERP, SAP, Oracle e-Business, this kind of tools. But also we're going to find people from the service desk because they're going to have to be aware of what's going on the resolution of the incident so they can go back to the business users and give them updates. And same for senior executive. So looking at what we need to do when something like this happens. So that's really the phase 2 in the process that we were describing. That's the time to respond. Now that I know that there's something going on, service desk is going to have to reach out to the right major incident team, so the right IT people, but also keep communicating with the impacted business users, and may have to keep updating the senior executives. And that's called the time to respond. How much time does it take me to engage the right teams, right? And what's interesting is the mean time to respond, as you can see here, can take up to 70% of the entire time to resolution. And that's given by Forrester, which is an analyst. So you see, it's extremely time-consuming, and it doesn't bring too much value, because in this phase we are just putting the right people together so they can start doing the investigation. Okay, so so the question that I would ask, or anybody would ask, is, so why is it taking so long? And the answer is, it's not automated. That's the only piece in the process that is really where we see very little automation. So, and let me explain to you why. So if we, and actually I have another data point that I can share with you, and that's for North America, same survey I was talking about before. On average, it takes 27 minutes from the time we know there's a major incident to the time where the right people are engaged and collaborating on fixing the issue. Okay, so why does it take so long? If there's no automation, like I said, that means there are manual processes, and people are relying on those manual processes to reach out and communicate with all the different stakeholders. So again, what you see here is there is a critical event, let's call it like the British Airways reservation system crash. Business users are going to complain to the service desk by opening tickets via email, phone call, or web form. The NOC may have picked up the issue, but bottom line, at one point, service desk is aware and is going to open a ticket. And the ticket in this case is not going to be a service request, it's going to be a priority one. We open a ticket in the ticketing system, in the ITSM platform. We're going to assign an incident manager. That's going to take 5 minutes. So as you can see here, the blue line indicates the time to respond, and we're going to track the time it takes to respond, so to get the stakeholders aligned and engaged so that they can work on the issue. So we assign the incident manager. The incident manager, based on the type of incident, based on the type of application, based on the impact, and maybe is using the IUM methodology, is going to reach out to different IT members. What they do here is they send an email. That's why I call it the spray and pray. And I've seen organizations send emails to entire teams when something goes wrong. Let's say something goes wrong with the network, they send an email to the entire network team, hoping that someone's going to jump in. That's spray and pray. So it's going to take 5 minutes. But as we all know, or maybe it's going to be a reminder, when we're trying to reach out to people via email, most likely this is what's going to happen. Those IT guys are just busy, right? They may be in a meeting, so they're not looking at their emails. They may be on a break. They may be working in the data center, maybe stuck in traffic. And, for large organizations where your NOC, your development center, your operations, your service desk are in different locations, different time zones, they may just be sleeping, and you may just be trying to reach out to people via email in the middle of the night. And as far as I know, emails don't wake up anybody at 2 in the morning. Or they just may be on PTO or on vacation, right? So we can't expect a fast response from those people in those situations just by using email. So what's going to happen next is we are going to try to call them. So okay, so now we're going to look at the company phone book, the registry. We're going to identify the people we want to reach out to. We're going to find a phone number for those people. We're going to try to reach out. If we're lucky, we're going to have a conversation going. We're going to brief them on the issue, convince them that they have to join this conference bridge that we're going to set up, and go to the next person. If we're not lucky, we're just going to have to leave a voicemail. And if for those people that we're not able to reach out to, what we're going to do is try a different number. So same thing, I need to find a cell phone number now for the people who didn't respond to my first call. So it's going to take me another 4 minutes per participant. And if they don't respond, guess what? I'm going to have to call the boss now, because the IUM like we defined it, is now just increasing because the number of minutes or the number of the time for which the application is unavailable is increasing. So I'm going to have to call the boss now and say, hey, Bob, can you get me 2 people from your team? They don't seem to be answering me. Same thing, the boss is going to call his team, get a few members of his team, ask them to join the conference bridge. It's going to take another 4 minutes per participant. Now we've got everybody engaged. As an incident manager now, I'm going to have to send everybody's the dialing information to a WebEx, to a Skype, to a GoToMeeting session. So dialing information, access code, and phone number, so that everybody can start collaborating and looking at the issue. This simple process here has taken already 51 minutes. So for 51 minutes, the application was not available. People are now starting complaining into the service desk. And worst, we haven't even starting to look at the actual issue and the cause for this issue. So that's why this time to respond takes a long time. And as you can see now, at this time, after 51 minutes into the issue, we have now maybe hundreds of thousands of impacted business users. So your IUM is going through the roof at this point. So how can we help? There are some solutions here available on the market that you can research if you find yourself in this situation. They are called IT response automation, or like I said before, IT alerting. And what they do is they actually automate all this reach to people, and the system is gonna reach out to the people via email, via SMS, via phone calls, via mobile application push notification until those people respond. And usually what we see with organizations that have implemented such solution is that you're going to cut this time to respond by 10 from my example, but usually down to around 5 minutes. Again, the idea is when I have P1s and P2, we don't have time to waste, and we need to get the right people on board. And like Roy said before, the members of the MI team, the major incident team, they should know what they have to do in case of an issue. What we do here is we make sure that they know that there's an issue, so they can actually start doing what they're supposed to do. Benefits for putting this in place. Like you see here, it's going to be huge for us in the service desk, but also outside of the support center. The system will help us reach out to the right people, and only the right people, the people who are absolutely required. If I need 2 network engineers, the system is going to call 2 network engineers. There's going to be an automatic escalation, and if people don't respond. And what I like about this is I've been in situation previous lives where I had myself to call a boss to say, you know what, we need people from your team on this restoration call. In this case, there is no in-person conversation. The system is calling the people, so there's you don't have to feel bad because you are going to wake up someone at 2 in the morning. No, the system is going to do it for you. It is going to inform also, the business users. So business users, they're going to receive SMS or a notification that's going to say, please, no need to open a ticket with service desk. We know there's an issue. IT is working on the issue. We'll let you know when the service is back up and running again.
And Vincent, I'm going to jump in here for a second and just remind people that one of our previous webinars talked about call storms that get generated because there's a huge number of inbound calls. People keep reporting an issue that you already know about, et cetera. It kind of spirals out of control. And you can go back and listen to that webinar on demand at your leisure. Thanks.
That's a really good point, yeah. That's a really good point. And Roy was talking about the major incident team. With this kind of solutions, what happens here is that people are going to receive notification, and in one click they can get on a conference bridge. No need to send dialing information and WebEx access code and so on and so forth. Got to keep your stakeholders informed. So basically, the idea here is to help this communication hub, which is the service desk, communicate with the three stakeholders, which are the business users, keep updating my business users on the progress on the incident resolution, work and communicate with the major incident team or the IT team so that they have all the information they need and they can give me back a status on where they stand, and keep updating senior management so that they can track the impact on business, and if needed, they can take business decisions. They can make business decisions. And what we see is, since this is going to help reduce the time it takes to resolve the issue, there's going to be a savings for the IT organization, but also for the business. Same thing for your IUM. We're going to be able to limit the increase of the IUM by limiting the number of minutes where your application is not available. And what I like about those solutions is the post-mortem fact-based conversation, because they provide you with a report which is going to tell everybody, oh, it took 12 minutes for the network team to jump on a conference bridge. So it's a fact-based conversation. So there's no blaming, there's no finger pointing. It's just looking at the facts, and it's going to track when everybody joined the conference call or responded to the notification, and so on and so forth. So takeaways for you talking about this topic of incidents, the fact that they are rising, the number is rising, and the fact that whenever we have major incidents, what we need to do is really make sure that we resolve those incidents faster. I just have 3 recommendations here. Start with measuring your average time to respond. How much time does it take for me or for us as an organization to reach out to the 3 stakeholders that we have identified? And most importantly, how much time does it take to engage the IT team or the major incident team once a major incident has been opened? If you find that the time to respond is around 5 minutes, you're fine, nothing to change. Maybe revise the process with the major incident team, but I mean, you are really on good tracks here. But if it's higher than 5 minutes, there may be room for improvement, and recommendation I would make here would be have a look at how today you are managing on-call schedules, especially for the IT teams, but also for support centers. Escalation process. What happens if people don't respond to notification when there is a major incident? And look at your SLAs. Do I have SLAs with the business when the mission critical application are being impacted? And your notification system. How do I get in touch with people when I really need these people to be engaged? Am I relying on email? Therefore, what happens when email goes down? Or do I have backups? Am I using a multi-channel communication path to get a hold of people, and so on and so forth? So with that, you should be able to get a better handling at how you deal with major incidents when they occur, and you should be able to reduce the time it takes not only to respond, but also to restore the entire service.
And that's the goal. Get the service back up and running, and get the users in where they need to be and doing the work they need to do. Great. So we do have quite a few questions today. So let's take a look at the questions and see. Here's one for you, Vincent. Is it possible to automate reaching out only to people who are absolutely required? And I think you actually mentioned that. Would you have an example of a tool to do this?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's exactly the point. The point is there are response automation solutions available to you today. that will, for example, let's take a very practical example. You have a business application. Let's say your website, the website goes down for your organization. Automatically, part of the major incident team, you're going to have the different people from different teams that have to do with this application. Now, the automation tool will automatically look for those people and will be able to specify how many people do I need from each team, and based on the day in the week, the time in the day, who's on call, is going to reach out to those individuals automatically. And if they don't respond automatically after a few cycles that are defined with the major incident team, it's going to escalate to the next person in line or to the manager. And those are called IT alerting solution per Gartner.
Thank you. And there's a question here about, by major incident team, do you mean we should have people doing only major incidents 100% of the time? No. Let's hope you don't have major incidents 100% of the time. But even if you don't need to have a separate team. What you do need to do is define who it is from each aspect of your IT organization and who in your management and business organization needs to be involved when there is a major incident, to keep everybody informed and make sure that all the remedies are being applied as rapidly as possible. So maybe an incident, depending on what the incident involves, but you might want to have somebody involved from your data center team, somebody from your network team, somebody from your user desktop team, somebody on communication at the service desk, et cetera, et cetera. That's the team. It's not a dedicated major incident team. It would be just a defined major incident team. I think I got that right, Vincent. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And depending on the nature of the incident, the nature of the application, the location of the application, the members of the team may be different. So if I have a big issue with my web application, maybe I don't need to bother the mainframe guys. So depending on the nature of the incident, the people, the members of the major incident team may be different. But again, not a dedicated team. They're going to be only get on deck when we have a major incident. But from an incident management standpoint, you should have already incident managers dedicated to handling those major incidents. So they know that when something goes wrong, they have a process and they are going to coordinate or orchestrate the resolution of the incident. So it's very important that we have an incident manager or major incident manager part of the team, because you can see the major incident manager as the maestro, just like in a orchestra. It's gonna orchestrate the resolution and the communication with the different stakeholders.
All right, great, thank you. I did talk about the difference between an incident and a request earlier, and someone else has asked to explain the difference between a problem and an incident. Well, a problem is generally a cause of incidents. It's an underlying condition that may cause interruptions. It's not the same as an incident. It is not an interruption itself. Incidents don't turn into problems. Incidents might be a symptom of a problem, and I'll give you a real-world example of that. Every afternoon at 2 o'clock, a particular group of users in a particular building lose the ability to talk to a database. Well, why is that happening? Every afternoon they call up and they say, hey, we can't talk to the database. And so what you want to have your root cause analysis team do, is your problem management team, is take a look at what's causing that. In the particular instance I'm referring to, this is, again, a real-world example. It was a misconfigured router on the network that was causing connectivity to drop at particular times of day, and therefore disconnecting this one group of people from the database that they needed. So problem underlying root cause analysis is part of problem management. And what happens when there is a problem, generally speaking, is that you might see it in terms of incidents that pop up. Okay, good question, thank you. in your view, do you think that having an ITIL certification will increase success as a problem manager? Well, certification itself will not help you. Being educated about the processes of problem management will help you, and understanding what the goals of problem management are will help you. If you get that education and knowledge through the process of obtaining a certification, then I suppose that will help you. But the certification itself, no. Okay. How do you determine the number of affected users? This is in terms of interrupted user minutes, I guess. There are multiple ways. First of all, just superficially, you might say, well, everybody in building 3 just lost connectivity. So you might know that there are 300 people in building 3. Configuration management is the key, really, though, to determining who is using what, how, and when. Capacity management, configuration management, all of these processes go together to allow you visibility into who's connected to what and doing what with it. So that's a configuration management question.
And I just wanted to add, Roy, there are tools available in the market that can actually tell you how many users have lost connectivity to a certain application. They are also referred to as UEM, user experience management tools. I know a few companies that do that, and that's basically looking at the entire delivery path of an application and looking at how many end users have been disconnected.
Right, great. This question I think is for you. What does Gartner call these types of tools that you've been talking about? These alerting tools that you're talking about.
So the term that Gartner is using is IT service alerting, but they're really response automation solution. How do I respond? How do I reach out to the right people in a timely manner? How do I automatically escalate? How do I automatically send targeted notifications so that people can directly take action from the notification and, for instance, reply that they are available to take care of an issue, or reply that they're not available. They can also, in one click, get on a conference bridge and or activate some chat ops or collaboration tools. So all those features and capabilities are referred to as IT service alerting by Gartner.
All right, thanks. And we do have a question specifically on this slide, which is why I zoomed back there. What do these percentages represent, Vincent? Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. 61% of what?
Yeah. So again, like I said, these numbers are coming from a survey, and in the survey, people were asked what are the top causes for your major incidents. So these 61% of the responses included network outages as being one of the top reasons for an outage. So that's the number of responses.
Right. So 61% of the respondents said that it was, in fact, a network outage.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. And I think that's all the questions we have for today. We're just about wrapping up. Join us for our next webinar on Tuesday, September 19th. Thank you very much, Vincent, for being here. And thank you very, very much to our sponsor, Everbridge, who has presented multiple HDI webinars. And thank you for attending today. We look forward to seeing you the next time. This webcast is copyright 2017 by United Business Media. This presentation and materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that is the case, by HDI, which is solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and opinions. Thanks again, Vincent, on behalf of HDI for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.